So our next panel is a discussion chaired by Mark Lubner. And Mark has dedicated his life and expertise to helping and inspiring others as a creative and conscious leader of social enterprises, such as Africa Tikkun and the Smile Foundation. Mark has taken the social enterprises he leads to significant scale and remarkable impact. It is my privilege to welcome my friend and fellow Bengaluru traveller, Mark Lubner, to introduce our guest today and to guide us through a conversation of embedding a new framework for conscious ethical leadership, given the elections, current conditions, and the demise of truth and transparency. Over to you, Mark.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope everybody's feeling, inspired. And I must admit right up front that I thought about preparing for today. And I determined that perhaps it's better just to arrive, engage the mood and feeling. It's been remarkable to watch how Conscious Companies events have in fact matured to the point where individuals are happy to sit as they did in a panel earlier on with Michael, some of the talks that we've heard, and just be human. So truthfully, if I may, I'm going to start off and ask my panel to be human beings and not be heads of organizations and what you've achieved necessarily in your life. I figure, first of all, that if Pepe can get on stage with pink socks and Michael Juden can put on white tackies with a black suit, you guys are welcome to take off jackets, take your shoes off. Now, I think what I'm really going to do is appeal to you as individuals and as human beings. You've all got unique characteristics. When I was looking at backgrounds, you've got a woman who, a feminist, how critically important it is, and if I may, from a male point of view, that the feminine energy is expressed so that the male energy can necessarily do what it needs to necessarily do. How incredibly important it is to have individuals like yourself who've got the experience, the broad base of experience, that you earn yourself a title of a polymath, quite frankly, somebody who shares an array of experiences, a human being who faces tragedy, quite frankly, what we could define as tragedy, young children dealing with cardiac problems, and you introduce the concept of light, laughter, and song. And your depth of spirit in the work that you do says that you're not purely an academic. You're truly a light and a guide. So I think as individuals, I haven't spoken once about any of your companies. And I do want to start off our discussion quickly with an open confession. My good friend Adam talks about the so-called results, successes, impacts that we've had as an organization. I want to make a confession. In recent times, I've started as an outcome of conscious thinking, realizing the importance of acceptance. Meditation is great. We breathe and we reflect internally. But at some point of time, funny enough, you wake up to the fact that you might think that you are a Caesar-type, Napoleonic-type leader. And I've realized, 20-odd years of doing this line of work that I've been in, that in fact, I have failed. I have not succeeded. 30,000, 40,000 kids through our organization in a sea where the need is for 2 to 3 million. Truthfully, following that line of leadership, I've actually failed. And I'd like to start off panel discussion today with a suggestion that maybe leadership isn't all about the authority, the boss, the CEO title. Perhaps leadership is really all about being the facilitator, the catalyst. And that the fact that the world today, as I accept it, in the state that it's in South Africa, worldwide, and we say, where's the leadership? There's a dearth of leadership. Maybe what the world has presented, the universe has presented, us is with an opportunity to say the days of a Messiah leading us forward are in fact days of the past. And as we as a species are maturing, maybe it's about leadership that we don't often see, but behind the scenes is facilitating the kind of change that we necessarily need to see. So leadership in itself, in terms of the philosophy of embedding a new framework, might need to, in a conscious manner, might need to be rethought. With that as the sort of background, I'm going to ask, if I may, and in no specific order other than just possibly following a logic, to start with you and give us a sense of you and what you feel about in terms of what do we need to do to change the leadership paradigm. Sorry for the long speech.
Thank you. Thank you. The way you have mentioned, I think leadership is not a science, it's an art. And I compare leadership as a parenting. Why I'm saying parenting? Because you have all the choices to become a parent. You can become a parent, but all you need to decide is, do you want to be a parent, or are you willing to be a parent? So leadership is like that for me. It's like I have a choice to be a leader. And if I choose to be a leader, I should be a parent to my colleagues, to my students, to my peers, and to everyone. It's not about authority, it's not about position, it's not about title. It's about being a good human being and then carry your organization, put a values into the system, and take that organization along with you. So for me, leadership is more about perspective and empathy. When you combine these two, you become a good parent, you become a good leader, and then you take your organization ahead into the competitive world. That's for me is leadership.
Risha, and apropos that, to be a parent, you have to take on a sense of responsibility.
Absolutely.
And that responsibility as a parent actually never really ends. Would you agree?
So, when you are leading your organization as a parent, you are very much accountable for not only the decision making, but also what your colleagues and the peers and the subordinates are doing. For me, it's like you cannot say, suppose it's a review process, and you say, okay, you could not able to meet the numbers, just see this month, and if you're not able to do it, I don't know what's your gonna be future. If I'm this kind of a leader, I don't think so anybody will feel safe with me. And if I feel like a parent, I will never say my child that tomorrow you're not gonna be at home. What I'll do is I'll comfort, I'll give him chances, I'll be a support system, I'll be able to stand in front of him or her to say, I am there to help and support. Don't worry, I'm there with you. And that's what leadership is all about.
Melissa, I'm going to direct a question to you about leadership, in particular in the sense of the upcoming elections, where young people today, frankly speaking, are confused about news. They think TikTok, in fact, is a news channel. So how confused young people are becoming about what leadership should all be about. The sense of apathy amongst young people who've lost faith in the system that they've grown up with. Where do you see the role of, in particular, the feminine in all of that, the role of that in leadership?
So I'm old school. I lost my parents at a young age, but I had a very, very strong mother who actually taught me basic principles of this is right and this is wrong. Unfortunately, some of the criticism that I have personally, this is my personal opinion, by the way, it's not the Durban Chambers one, is with the income of democracy, we have found ourselves in a situation where kids have got rights not to listen to you as parents, not to do anything to teachers, not to do anything, basically. So there's too much rights and freedom that have been given to children, and less teaching to try and teach them between what is right and what is wrong. So we find our children, as a parent now, you don't take the responsibility to teach your child what is right and what is wrong, and basic principles. I always make an example and say to people, I only have boys, so I've got 3 boys. And I say, my role as a mother is to make sure that I teach my children to know the difference between a good person and a bad person. Because when they grow up, I will not be able to choose their partner for them, even if I don't like their partner. But the most important thing is if I've taught them the basics to tell the difference between wrong and right, that's it. So when it comes to elections and, young people listening to TikTok and everything else, I think it's very important for us as parents to take responsibility to teach our children. Unfortunately, in a country we live in right now, we've got young parents, you've got children as young as 12 being a mother. They're children themselves, what do they know? So we need to come up as society and try and teach our young people the difference between good and bad and basic principles of humanity, and then they can make the right choices.
I think that what you're suggesting is very, very important, that we once again perhaps need to rely on certain traditional roles. And please, I might offend certain individuals, so I certainly don't mean to, but in a sort of environment of gender neutrality, I think roles, the masculine and the feminine, sometimes can get confused, rather than the respect for each of those important roles. And that's not to say that men can't perform in feminine roles, and equally that the feminine can't necessarily be, or that the masculine can't necessarily be implemented by the female.
Absolutely. When I look at myself, for example, because of the values and principles that my parents raised me with, I know that right now I'm a wife and I'm a mother. And when I'm at home, I'm not the boss, I'm a wife. And that's how I'm supposed to behave. When I'm at home, I'm a mother to my children, not their boss. And I need to then be able to, balance the role of feminism, where sometimes certain people say, take feminism to an extreme, where they say, now I've got this big position, therefore I'm not going to cook anymore, I'm not going to do certain things. You still need to do those basic things within your family, as a mother, that society expects you to perform.
Without negating your leadership.
Absolutely.
Rowan, if I could ask you, you've had such an incredible breadth of experience. When we were talking about a little earlier on, you shared about your global experience, and I'd imagine also experience with the various different human beings. Where do you see us right now, and in particular from a worldwide perspective? There seems to be issues pertaining to truth, transparency, popularism, as opposed to necessarily integrity. Where do you see us going as a global society, and what do you recommend are some of the leadership competencies that need to be implemented, so that we get effectively to the point where we really do stop the Earth's warming and the warfare that's going on, the hatred and separation that seems to be taking place worldwide?
Sure, thank you. Firstly, for eliciting in yourself such a beautiful, complex question, and doubtlessly one that I won't do full justice to. I love you starting from the perspective of the global again. I think this is effectively at the moment a species issue that is symptomatically represented and manifested in different countries, in different sectors, at home, at business, geopolitics. We're facing an issue, you alluded to it, of the immaturity of our species, which, if you look at it through different lenses, whether it's existential risk, psychology, neuroscience, etc., we can paint a picture of ourselves, and it's just a playful narrative. The kind of recognition that we may be giving effect more to the Homo delinquens than to the Homo sapiens. That our being in this Homo habilis mode of survival, even when we have lots of financial wealth, we're still in survival mode. We're still in the stress mode. that Jan was referring to earlier, rather than the well-being mode. And our relationship with each other internally, different parts of our anatomy, right? The relationship with our heart and how it beats irregularly, our breath and how it's shallow, and how that gives direct rise to the killing of ourselves through strokes and heart attacks, the killing of ourselves through suicide, which is, arguably the largest death, including our food, by the way, is another major factor for our killing ourselves. These are the signs of a species that, at best, is a rogue teenager. And so the question for us as that rogue teenager is, how do we elicit the consciousness that we all hold dear here from our internality, both individual and collective? But then I think there's the larger, and the beauty of this panel, it requires a framework in which it's to be held. And whilst we have some wonderful people eliciting, at least sporadically and more consistently, the beauty of well-being for ourselves and others, this structure, this dirty pond in which we are goldfish that are sometimes extracted to be cleaned through our consciousness, we still need to go back in that dirty pond, that small, lonely, dirty pond of the fabric of the world, the framework of the world. And so I want to really pick up on that. The key of the framework, I want to step into my lawyer, multinational lawyer, banker personality. I want us to go hard on our radical sense of systemic ambition. Nicholas and I were talking a little bit earlier. Einsteinian insanity is rife. We do the same things over and over again at pivotal moments, expecting things to change. This is a form of immaturity. We are requiring new radical structures for fulfillment. We need radical ambition. That's the gap there. That's that space between that triangle I mentioned of huge, vast awareness and very specific attention. In that triangle is our ambition, our potential for ambition. If our awareness is vast, then that triangle is vast. If our awareness is fractional, the triangle is tiny. And so how do we create those new structures? And where I would go, the rubber hits the road, for me is we're dealing with a kind of socio-economic technology, I'm going to call it. And we're blessed in this room. I don't think South Africans really appreciate, and I say this now as a lawyer too, an international lawyer, who Mervyn King really is, and Michael and these guys. They are doyens in the world of corporate governance. Sarbanes-Oxley and the Combined Code and these sort of things. 1996, that King Code came out, was mind-blowing. I mean, people like that are at the level of the Mandelas and the Tutus of the world in their sector. So our Constitution, I mean, is still arguably one of the greatest documents. So these are structures, if you like. Now, so I bow to that. And then I ask ourselves, is that a ChatGPT for the future as a corporate governance or a listing rules? No, it's not. It's a typewriter. It's a foundation. It's the foundation of the house has been created, and it's now up to us to create a greater structure. And what do I mean, just very briefly, and then I'll close, is we need to infuse this socio-economic corporate governance technology with the technology of the ecology, your point. The latest science on planetary boundaries, right? The latest science on, neuroscience and psychology. These need to be infused into the corporate governance, into the listing rules, right? So that there is a transdisciplinary approach. The law and the accounting and everything is sophisticated, but the consciousness and ecological foundations and frankly the drafting is crude. So how do we do that is one of the key questions. If I can take a quorum, an example of a quorum. If you just take to be clear, if you have a quorum requirement, what is it, guys? It's presence. What presence? What presence? Physical presence. Physical presence of a person nominated as a director to be in a room. Let's pick up on Jan's point. But what's the state of the director? If he's in a stressed state, if he's at a low level of consciousness, right? If he's a psychopath or sociopath, and or he's angry, what are we going to get? We already know the answer. That's the world we're going to get. What if quorum requirement was also a requirement to be present in our consciousness? That it wasn't quorate. You couldn't make a decision unless somebody was fully and fulfillingly present. Thank you.
So, Willem, my question to you is, are you present? I'd like to suggest that absolutely right what you've suggested is that there's a need for a serious step change, a reconfiguration. And one of the choices that we have is to go into that with a sense actually of not only understanding the severity of it, but with gratitude and joy. And how better to do that than through song and smile, which is an important choice that we can make. So we can either choose to frown, as Jan suggests, leading to stress, or we can choose to smile. And you, sir, have been one of those individuals who's chosen to not only smile yourself, but help thousands of others, children and their families, necessarily smile. Give us a sense of how would you see your approach to life as being a necessary change that's needed in the world today around leadership.
Thanks very much, Mark. First of all, I want to apologize for not wearing the right socks. I normally do, but somebody said to me, listen, nobody's going to take you seriously if you wear those bawdy socks. It seems I followed the wrong advice. I was certainly going to do away with these socks and get myself, find out where Michael buys his socks. I don't know how to follow you, so I'm going to dumb it down a little to my level and ask you to repeat all of that to me in English again a little later. For me, in answer to your question, Mark, for me it's about responsibility and opportunity. And what feeds into that is gratitude and humility and grace. When I decided to try and combine this quirky idea of music and heart disease, and when we started the company and we thought we'd got to give it a flavor, we're cooking the souffle. And the reason why we chose this song, Who Wants to Live Forever, I was saying to myself, it's the perfect metaphor for a legacy. Because none of us can live forever, but we can create something which can do good and be good long after we've left. And I read somewhere that ties into what our esteemed panelists there said, to be a parent. I read somewhere that my father didn't tell me how to live. He lived and allowed me to watch him do it. And my father was the most remarkable man. I've never met a person with more integrity than my father. He immigrated to South Africa from Germany in 1949, worked at a farming co-op and saved enough money to package the jacket he'd borrowed from a friend for the crossing and sent it back to its original owner in Germany. And he lived his life according to that sort of principle. And to go back to the words I used earlier, is I'm not aware of my sense of responsibility to self, to family, to friends, to colleagues, and to greater society, then I'm going to miss the opportunities to make their lives better and to make society better and to do something and leave something good behind. And this concept of leading by example, in my line of work, there are many different leadership roles which I can assume. In the operating room, like it or not, as the surgeon, I have to assume the leadership role. Everybody else looks to me. But it's a team effort, so I have to draw everybody in. I can't do what I do without an anesthetist, without a nurse, without... So it's about pulling everything together and making sure that you're an integral part by drawing them into your world and making sure that you are present in theirs. And just a last little vignette of leading by example. I always tell my children, one day when I grow up, I want to be like you. They are remarkable individuals, and I was driving along with my son, then he was 14, and one of his friends had upset him. And he was really, you could see, because he's an incredibly sensitive chap. And one of the things he said to me, he said, you know, Dad, I hold my friends to the values of loyalty and honesty and integrity, and I hold myself to an even higher value system to that. And I said to him, wow, that's very insightful. Where did you learn that? And he smiled at me and he said to me, monkey see, monkey do, Dad. Yeah. And that just embodies everything for me. And I hope I've answered your question without boring the delegates to tears.
No, yeah, very clearly that what you've suggested is that integrity, which is not earned by what we say, but in fact by what we do, is a key critical principle in leadership. And as we're now moving into elections, I think, as Hussein expressed a little bit earlier, we have these individuals whose faces are on posters all over the place with slogans underneath, and we drive past and we say, yeah, right. Yeah, right. Have you actively lived by the slogan so that we can, in fact, believe in you? If I think quickly, if I might, I have 5 minutes in terms of wrapping up. Literally, if I might, a minute for each. Give me what you would like to see, if I may. One key principle that you would like to see, and perhaps this is a little bit unfair to ask in the context of South Africa, perhaps maybe make it then a global. One attribute that you would like to see in all these individuals who are standing for elections around the world. We're going into a very busy electioneering period. What would be meaningful to you that would stand out to you if you were to vote for a leader, be it on a world stage or in the South African context?
So I'll talk globally because India is also under the election time now.
Correct.
So 60% of the population, whole of the world is under election. So if I need to vote, I'll see the humanitarian approach of the leader. If he has that and if he stands by his people, I think that's the guy for me. So I'll look for the humanitarian approach.
Humanitarian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank
Melissa.
you very much. I really look for the integrity and commitment of that particular leader. You can't say one thing and then walk another. So that's what's very, very important for me. And somebody who seems determined. We're in a crossroads right now as a country. And it is very important that when we go out and elect right now, we elect capable leaders that will make sure that our country comes first and not parties. Thank you.
And I heard you say earlier, Palesa, which really stuck with me, that it starts with people acknowledging that they have failed, that there is a problem, they've been part of the problem, but I'd like to suggest to you, human beings create problems, therefore who better to find solutions?
Let's find them together.
Amen. Amen. Ron.
I think it dovetails very much with what's been said already. I think the word I would use is alignment. So sort of systemic alignment, or holistic alignment. So in other words, what if the censoring of an individual matched in with the emotioning of an individual, with the cognition of an individual, with the speech or silence of an individual, with the walk or the hesitation, the omission or the action of an individual, and then the relation of that individual, with not just self, but other, and particularly other creatures, other than just the human species. I think it would be a pretty cool game. Yeah.
No, I like that concept very much, alignment, because to be aligned, you necessarily have to be cognizant. And if you're going to be aligned to others, you've actually got to stop to listen. Willem, what would you suggest?
The word that comes up for me is value. Basically, I would like to ask one of our political leaders, or if someone would ask me that question, can I add value to your existence and the existences of those around you? And if I can't add value, at least not subtract the value which you bring. Because it's all about creating a valued harmony. And so if you can't add value, at least don't subtract from the value which already exists. Just be good and do good.
Thank you very much. I think that's given us an enormous amount of guidance. As we wrap up, can I just possibly a last thought in everybody's mind? We so often think about leadership in the sense of a triangle, the boss at the top, the leader at the top. What happens if we invert that and we put the leader at the bottom in service of others, helping those who are at local level, regional level, effectively succeed? Wouldn't we live in a very much more productive, sensitive society where leaders perhaps listened before they actually spoke? Thank you very much, everybody. I do hope and pray that when we in South Africa go to the polls, we'll be driven to support service-driven leaders, community-driven individuals, rather than individuals who are just simply self-serving. So thank you very much for this opportunity, Brenda. Marvelous that you do this, and it's incredible to see how this whole process is maturing to the extent that it is. Well done to you for being one of our leaders.